I love doing this podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the stuff with your friends who are also interested in changing the industrial education paradigm and, doing it with more joy and wonder and curiosity and all of that good stuff. And as you know, Regenerative Ed is produced by Grounded Teaching, which has been a project that my sister Jess and I started almost 3 years ago to see how we can use all of the living system wisdom that we were learning in other areas of our work that we were engaged in and passionate about, and to see if those same principles and teachings could somehow be applied to the educational industrial system to make it more regenerative, more alive, more like the ways that we were studying how to do that with agriculture and our own gardens and textile supply chains and all that stuff. And since that time, I started this podcast, and we've hosted a number of workshops and retreats built for educators to try to really get at that mission. And we've done some consulting work with schools and the homeschool parents and micro schools and even some corporations who are wondering about applying a regenerative mindset to how and why they operate. And it's been really, really meaningful. And we want to keep doing stuff that feels really meaningful while we think really hard about what the next iteration is. The best next step for us that is going to help a living system framework become more accessible to the people who want it, easily understandable for the people who feel that they might not want it because they might not know what it is. And on that note, how we can provide support that actually really matters. What we're really asking is, how can we be the most supportive, paradigm-shifting educator community out there? So we are pretty excited to share what we found when we were asking ourselves that question. And we're going to share that with you in a couple of weeks coming up. So anyways, if you're listening, you're probably an educator of some sort, maybe a K-12 teacher or a college professor or an outdoor educator, a homeschooling parent who knows that the way that the educational system is working isn't working. So we're going to help in the most accessible way that we could think of, with the most joy and the most impact. And if that sounds cool to you, stay tuned. Then there's also a place in the show notes where you can sign up to hear more about it when we first drop it. So you can just put your email down there, type it all in, be good to go, and stay updated. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of pattern 5 of our free workshop as a podcast series in biomimicry. And what we're doing is observing natural patterns in natural systems. And then we're considering their purpose and their function. And then if we can apply that pattern in place of an industrialized pattern in our lives or in our work. Does that sound good to you? Sounds good to me. So if you want more of an introduction about what this is, if you haven't, listened to any of these pattern episodes yet, you can hit up episode 33, which is the intro. And with that, I'm going to get into it. Episode 38. Wow, I'm back. I'm back so fast. It hasn't even been a week. Who am I? What's going on? I couldn't stay away, actually. I really do love these pattern series, and I have neglected other important things like working out or doing other work to work on this. So thank you for listening to this so much. Thank you. It's so good to be here, continuing this podcast experiment. I hope that you're liking the workshop as a podcast series that we're trying, something new. If you are liking it, it would be so cool if you'd share it with somebody. Last week, we talked about streamlining. Did you start thinking more about what certain things you're streamlining? Are you streamlining certain things? What could you be streamlining? What are your values? I know that episode followed me around a little bit last week. So if you didn't listen to it yet, you can go ahead and catch it and let me know what you're thinking on Instagram at Grounded Teaching. Okay, but today our pattern is cloudforms. Remember, the first reason this workshop episode exists is to simply take a moment to appreciate the pattern. So a moment to appreciate the fluffy wonder of a cloud. It's dense, but it floats. It looks like you could sit on it, but you can't. What? It's the most important part to just look at these patterns in wonderment. And I hope that as you've gone through these episodes, you're like me, and I'm reminding myself as I'm reminding you how important this part is. And you are taking that time, and you are starting to see a change in the importance of just appreciating these amazing wonders of our world, what that does for you. So if possible, look outside your window right now, concentrate on the cloud forms if there are any. Try to describe them with your limited human language. Are they fluffy? Are they straight? Are they gray? Are they curved? Are they fat? Are they wispy? Are they scarce? Does any of it look like anything? Like any animals or anything that you're seeing in there? Kids are so much better at seeing things in clouds than us. And that's probably, I guess you could argue, because they have less responsibilities on their mind, but also because they have mostly theta brainwaves. So there are delta, theta, and alpha brain waves. We adults live most of our lives in alpha, but when you're first born, you're born in delta brain waves. And then between ages 2 and 6, mostly, you're in theta for most of the time. Theta brainwaves are what we experience right as we're about to drift off to sleep. They actually also happen while we're dreaming. So, or if you're very, very relaxed, like in a meditative state. So, how you think about those super weird imaginative thoughts right before you fall asleep? My high school friends and we used to call this parrots in the rain because, I don't know, I guess that was a really random thing that we could think of. So that was sort of what we called those thoughts that were right before you fall asleep, parrots in the rain. Those are theta brainwaves. Now imagine being in that drifting off to sleep brainwave state where you're thinking about these super random things, but then not falling asleep, but still having those brainwaves and then consciously looking at clouds. No wonder kids see dinosaurs in clouds. That they're in like a different brainwave state. Isn't that amazing? That's such a gift. And what a thing to consider when we're talking about early education too. Side note. Okay, but let's not digress. Clouds. Clouds is what we're talking about today. And to help you appreciate clouds a little bit more and to try to open up that creativity and that imagination a little bit, since we're not, chock full of theta brainwaves all the time, this week, when there's a notable pattern of clouds in the sky, take a picture of the clouds with your phone, then open up the picture to edit it, and then overdraw on the cloud any picture or any images that you see. This is an important exercise in imagination, something literally that all of us could use because of the mechanical unconscious culture that we find ourselves in. Okay, we need these practices to help us reimagine, reimagine imagination. So that said, we are also here to talk about what the patterns in natural systems mean for us when we're considering how to repattern some of the more mechanical systems that we seem to find ourselves in. And we're using natural patterns as a guide. So the question is, what can we learn from clouds about how to live? And I'll repeat that. What can we learn from clouds about how to live? Okay, and teach. That's part of it. But I thought that the way that I would lay this episode out is by looking at 3 different types of cloud forms and then specifically observing what each of them can teach us. Now, there are a lot more types of cloud forms than just 3. There are actually probably over 100, but we're just going to focus on 3. And warning, this might take you back to your 3rd grade self, or maybe you actually teach cloud forms because you're like, I think they do it in 3rd grade. I could be wrong. This is perfect for you then. You can bring this into your classroom. So obviously there's a lot to be said about cloud forms and what I'm going to get into here today. We're just going to go with the basics. Before we get into 3 types of clouds, let's quickly assess, as we've done in all the other podcasts, what we can simply observe about the overall function of the patterns, in this case, clouds. So what do clouds do? What do clouds do? Okay, well, hugely simplified. 1, clouds store the precipitation as a part of the greater system, the water system, and they're really a major part of that system. So they have the sort of storage capacity, right, as a part of a major system. 2, and really interesting to me for our purposes here, clouds can give us humans a prediction of the weather. So that's really where I'm going to be focusing today. So they're storage devices as a part of a cycle, and they're also a signal. So let's keep that in mind when we're talking about application, and let's get into our first cloud form here. So I'll also say it might be helpful to have pictures of these clouds while I'm talking about them, though I'm going to try to thoroughly describe them so that you get the idea of what they look like. But you can also simply click on the link in the show notes to go to the episode page to hear more. All right, so the first cloud form, possibly one of the most awe-inspiring in my book, is the cumulonimbus cloud. You cannot miss these clouds. These are clouds that are, well, they're really vertical, right? They're very low to the ground, and then they also tower over you. And often they have edges or parts that are puffy, but those edges blend into like a thick, towering blanket mass, and that usually covers a good chunk of the sky. So what are the conditions for cumulonimbus clouds to form? The conditions are hot days with wet air. And what do these clouds signal? If I see a cumulonimbus cloud, what can I predict is going to happen? A couple of things. Tornadoes, hail, or other heavy rain sort of storm events. Okay, so we have this hugely impressive, towering mass in the sky that does indeed, and makes a lot of sense, signal the potential for a very destructive force. And it's interesting that visually we can't miss it. It's pretty much this gigantic, towering warning sign. And I feel like that's really nice of Mother Nature to basically, hit the giant emergency button there and be like, pay attention, something's coming. So it's pretty safe to say that when you see a cumulonimbus cloud, that massive, puffy tower, you might feel a little afraid. Probably even more so for, most of human history when we weren't living in well-sided, well-roofed, solid houses with really solid foundations. The interesting thing to me is that you probably didn't learn somewhere that cumulonimbus clouds equal storm brewing. It's not something you probably read in a book, but you do probably innately know it. And I love this because how many things can we say are like that these days, right? We have pretty much tried to, bleach out, grind out, whatever it is, all of our human, animal, person in our modern society that's filled with, instruments and satellites and all this stuff is helpful. But the average person understands that a cumulonimbus cloud, even if they don't know the name of it, that it means a storm. You see it when you go outside. You learn it through experience. Or maybe, it's even lovely to think that it's encoded into our instinct in some way. So how can cumulonimbus cloud patterns teach us how to live? Maybe take a second and think about it before I give you my take. But I'll start here. The great thing about cumulonimbus clouds is, unless you have your head too far down, or you're unconscious, or you just spend your life in front of a screen, you'll see those clouds. They are huge. You'll see them and you'll have time to prepare for them. And it makes me feel like we, as a society, are having a bit of a cumulonimbus moment. Like, okay, in our part of the water cycle, we've been burning things up so hot that down the water system line, it's creating this towering cloud that is likely going to burst into some sort of devastating, precipitous moment. And I mean, honestly, this is metaphorical and literal. We literally have been creating a hotter planet, and we literally have been having more violent storms. And metaphorically, we've also been ignoring giant, towering, hugundo signals because we're too distracted or we're too scared or we don't know what to do. And the cumulonimbus cloud literally represents a heavy storm, but it also could represent something big and destructive that's coming our way, collectively or personally. And it's giving us a signal. But in order to see the signal, we have to be awake to see it, right? So are there major, huge signals we're ignoring because we're too scared to look in the face and prepare for those? When someone sees an ominous cloud like that, it's defense mode, not offense mode. There's nothing you can really do about it except for prepare to be on the defensive. And that is a tough spot because, and I'll say it in a more modern, Western culture that we're in, many folks tend to want to believe that everything is always going to work out according to plan. And a giant storm could sort of F up the plan. How do we hold the tension of being here and being present and also thinking about what we can do to be on the defense mode, and then once we get through the storm, to go back on the offense mode, right? And plan and strategize. How do we find the wisdom to do that? And I think what the cumulonimbus cloud can teach us is that when we're looking at it, we're alive, right? In that moment, staring up at that cloud that's about to rain some super scary shit on you, the one thing that it reminds you is that you are alive. And cumulonimbus clouds, as terrifying as they might be, remind us that we're alive. We are alive, and that is certainly something that can provide, I don't want to say comfort necessarily, but that sort of thing in a scary moment if we let it. So the potential for the cumulonimbus cloud remind me and what I'm thinking to stay awake. And I think that that's the lesson there for me, which is life. I'm not going to relate this one to teaching in a direct way because it feels more personal, but I'm wondering if we really could pay attention to the signals that the cumulonimbus cloud, that storm that's brewing in the background, if we could see that, if we could wake up and see it, take that warning and prepare, and then be grateful for it all in the present moment, not in a toxic positivity way, but in a way of sheer wonder and a reverence for life, I wonder if our kids will feel it. So no direct teaching application here, but I think that our kids would feel it if we felt that way. Okay, so that was cumulonimbus, which is also super fun to say. On to the next cloud, cirrus. You were hoping I'd say cirrus, weren't you? For some reason, it's the name that I remember from grade school. So if someone were to ask me to name a cloud as fast as possible, cirrus is what I would say. So as I'm recording this, I'm looking at a picture of cirrus clouds, and they look like little wisps. They remind me of hair on a baby's head. Did you know that they're actually ice crystals that get whirled and twisted into strands from wind currents? That's pretty cool, right? But unlike cumulonimbus clouds that predict something ominous, the cloud resources that I consulted noted that cirrus clouds simply predict a change in the weather. A change. And what I think is interesting about this is that it's not totally objective. It could be a change for colder weather, warmer weather, wetter weather, but it changes on its way. And it's all about the relationship of where you are to where you're going. And cirrus clouds are signposts that signal change is happening. The first thing that makes me consider is that sometimes I think we could use more of those cirrus cloud signals in our life. Instead of just jumping straight into a change, we send out a signal. And at any rate, most of the changes that I've made in my life that were successful were actually predicated on announcing the change. For example, the only times I've successfully done, let's say, a Whole30 challenge, that's where you eat only whole foods for 30 days, is when I actually send out the signal verbally a few days ahead of time and then give my immediate family some time to really marinate in that cirrus cloud signal that I'm putting out there. Then it actually works. If it's a Sunday night, though, let's say, and I'm eating some ice cream and I tell my husband, well, I'm starting Whole30 tomorrow. It's become actually a running joke. It doesn't work. My cirrus clouds didn't have enough time to form and give that signal out, and it's just not taken seriously. How many times have you tried to start a healthy habit, but then you didn't tell your friends, or you didn't mark the change in some way, and so you just don't do it, or you slide back into unhealthy habits? When you state your change, like a cirrus cloud does, okay, there's a change coming, you're so much more successful. And if you don't mark that change, it's hard, which is why I personally think that a ritual of marking the end of the school year is so important, so important. Even if you're homeschooling and you roll right through the season. So you're like, I'm homeschooling, so we do, and we're sort of unschooling, so we do summer, that's cool. But what are the rituals for change? Is there a change of the seasons? What's the ritual for the ending of that? Where do you mark the things that are going to be a little bit different from here on out? And not in an artificial, it's this date, so we have to mark it way, but like in a really purposeful way. Let's say that you're a first-year teacher, okay, and you want to roll out a new set of class rules or whatnot. And believe me, I've seen this 100 times. You do it on a Tuesday without any real ceremony or warning because you've been having behavior problems or something. And so you've had enough. And so Tuesday during class, you say, here's a new way we're going to operate as a class moving forward. No warning of change, no marker in the air, no cirrus clouds. Just we're going to do it this way now. It does not, 10 times out of 10, it won't work. I don't think I've ever seen that work. We need a signal. We need a cirrus cloud. We need to know that the change is coming. And that's what I'm learning about living from the lessons of a cirrus cloud. When I'm about to make a change, send up a cirrus cloud to prep the atmosphere. That's a lesson for me. Maybe there's something different that you took away from that, but that's for me. Up last, we have cirrocumulus clouds. Cirrocumulus clouds are kind of close to cirrus because they're super thin, but think like less wispy and more grainy or more ripply, but still pretty thin. What do cirrocumulus clouds signal? Well, cirrocumulus clouds signal fair weather. No big deal. Nothing's really happening. If you live in Ohio like me, you see them outside on a cold day because they're usually related to cold weather, and you think, what a pleasant day, or you may just think nothing at all. But here's the thing about cirrocumulus clouds. What if you don't live in Ohio? What if you live in a tropical region? Well, in that case, cirrocumulus clouds might not just mean rain or a gray day. They actually signal, hey, suckers, a hurricane is coming. Okay, so that is a totally different signal than what it means in a non-tropical climate. And that's why I love cirrocumulus clouds. They're a reminder of the notion, it depends. It depends. It depends on your place. How can we apply this pattern? Well, it depends. Where are you in the world right now? What is your relationship with your place and yourself and others? Are you in a place where a certain thing means warning, hurricane? Or does it just mean nothing? Understanding this prevents us from judging others. What I find to be a benign cirrocumulus cloud, I hardly even pay attention to it. Someone near the equator might think, oh no, it's coming. Like run, right? Get ready. And this is the lesson of empathy that the cirrocumulus cloud teaches us. It's easy to know when it comes to a question like, well, are you living in a tropical climate or not? But there are actually a million varieties of cirrocumulus clouds out there that we don't even know about. Not literally, but the symbolism of it. And our world is becoming more connected and more global. And this is an opportunity for empathy instead of judgment. For holding the fact that, let's say we live in Ohio and know a cirrocumulus cloud is benign because we are unlike most Ohioans and we're working outside every day and we notice the pattern of the clouds. That doesn't mean we're 100% right. We're just right for where we are in this place. How many times do we think we know the answers as friends, as parents, as teachers, even if we are certain that these things are right? It doesn't matter because we're not all in the same place. We need to remember that when it comes to our students. We don't know what those cirrocumulus clouds are. All right, so we just did 3 clouds. Let's recap. Cumulonimbus. That is where things have been hot and heavy and now a storm is brewing. The signal is so huge that I couldn't miss it unless my head is buried in the sand or glued to a screen or whatever. The lesson here is wake up, and practice holding the juxtaposition of knowing that the storm is going to come and that you need to prepare, but also, wow, what a magnificent thing it is to be alive right now. Look at that cloud. It is incredible. It is awe-inspiring. That's the cumulonimbus cloud. Then we have our cirrus clouds. Cirrus clouds are our symbol of change. They're subjective. They depend on the way that we're heading. We're about to go a different way, but we really need that signal of change, that placeholder cloud to announce that the change is coming. And then finally, we have cirrocumulus, which demonstrates that it's all about where you are, benign or malignant, something to ignore or something to prepare for. The cirrocumulus cloud, it really teaches us empathy. And hey, real quick, do you want a bonus one? I know you do. Okay, stratus clouds. Stratus clouds are those low blanket clouds that just look like one thick blanket on a gray day. Right now, I have stratus clouds outside my window, which is why I wanted to throw an extra bonus cloud in there. It feels like maybe it could rain, but it doesn't. Okay, it just sort of keeps you in this gloomy reservoir of waiting and feeling like life is sort of a slog. And you know what I mean if you live in like the Northeast United States this time of year. There's a lot of gray. And so I wanted to talk about it here. Of most of the clouds, the stratus cloud, it actually really affects my mood in the worst way. Though I know nothing should affect my mood but me, but damn it, stratus clouds. I get it. They're important for one reason or another, but damn it, the gloom. It's thick, and sometimes it can feel really oppressive. But it does make everything feel softer, less harsh. It feels gloomy, yeah, but at least it doesn't feel harsh. It feels sleepy, but it doesn't feel scary. And I guess sometimes we need those stratus cloud days, the days where we don't have the energy to feel sunny and bright and harsh and sharp. We need that sort of dampener. We need a literal blanket from the sky, a weighted blanket, right, to tuck us in and settle us down. And I'm really trying to be a fan of stratus clouds, but they make me feel unproductive. And for the last 15 years, I've been slowly trying to unwind the concept of finding my own self-worth, my own productivity. So stratus clouds don't help. But clouds don't mess up, right? They're not wrong. Stratus clouds are here for a reason. They aren't a mistake. They're what the atmosphere needs at the moment, or some sort of consequence of a weather pattern, but they aren't a mistake and they aren't bad. So as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to go make myself some tea and maybe start some sort of stratus cloud tea thing to make it feel more enjoyable when there's stratus clouds outside. I don't know. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to lean into it. And I think that the lesson here from stratus clouds, just as our little fourth bonus cloud, is that sometimes there can be this gray and this gloom, but it's not going to rain. It's not going to rain. And we can just settle in and sort of settle down and learn to take that cue from a stratus cloud. Okay. Anyways, as a recap, if you need some wisdom, look to the clouds. There are over 100 different variations of clouds that scientists have categorized in our Western science, and I'm sure that much or more when it comes to indigenous cultures around the world that know the clouds of their place so very well. So if you have time in your curriculum, or if you're able to do some journal writing in class, or if you have little ones, you can take them outside, or if you're a homeschooling parent, you have a lot of flexibility with your schedule, spend some time on clouds. Just like plant and animal identification, they bring us closer to where we are. Study clouds. Have kids do some cloud drawings like we talked about in the beginning. Have them come up with metaphors like I did here. This is the sort of thing that's going to give us joy in the moment and in the future. The sort of connection that we need if we want to marvel at what is right in front of us and build a future regenerative society. One more really important things on clouds. I did list 4 Western English scientific names for clouds here. However, people and cultures have had names for different types of clouds for so long, way, way, way before we had instruments to measure them and the formal field of science. There's so much wisdom here stored in the library of indigenous cultures, or even just people who have been so incredibly connected to their place over the years. I just came across this book while I was researching called If You've Forgotten the Names of Clouds, You've Lost Your Way, An Introduction to American Indian Thought. And I'll link to that. I haven't read it yet, but I just wanted to share it with you in case you were interested in that. There's also another brilliant piece on clouds that I have read that I'll link, and it's just a story by a journalist, Arati Kumar Rao, and it's called 40 Names of Clouds, and it documents her time spent in the Thar Desert on the eastern part of Pakistan with these shepherds who know the names of their clouds like the back of their hands. It's really fascinating, super illuminating, and I think you'd really enjoy it. Maybe your students would even enjoy it. Well, that's a wrap on episode 38. Thank you for listening. I'm so glad that we got to connect in this internet ether where time and space know no bounds. And if you like this podcast, would you take a sec now and share it with a friend? And if you're interested in what we've got coming up for Grounded Teaching, I will give you a little hint. You ready? It's not a noun. It's not a noun. Have I piqued your interest yet? If you're interested, sign up below so you don't miss the info at the beginning of April. Also, last thing, I forgot to say it last week, but huge thanks to our Patreon supporters. We so appreciate your financial support. I don't want to forget to say that. And all right, I am signing off from under this severe stratus situation, but allowing myself to be okay with it. Until next week, we have the pattern of lobes. That's right. I said lobes. Later.